In the House, it is former U.S. Attorney and also current state GOP Chairman, the one and only Mike Hurst. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. Great to be here.
Whew, what a weekend.
Where do you start?
I promised to do this one, first of all. For years, people have been experimenting with sodas, mixing flavors to adding things like ice cream, Coke floats. I hadn't had a root beer float in a long time. Fruits, even pickles. Now there's a new trend on TikTok for drinkers adding this to Coca-Cola. This is marshmallows. Hang on. It's called Fluffy Coke, and there's a correct way of doing it. One viral video. TikTok user teamed up with her Meemaw, Mama, it says here, to show exactly how to make a Fluffy Coke. She says, you have to take a cup, spread marshmallow fluff all over the inside of it, then add ice and then pour in the Coke later or after that. Swirl it around with a straw, then take a sip. Some people say like the flavor, creamy texture. Others say it's too sweet and hard to scrape the marshmallow off the side of the cup.
You know, I try to prepare for your show, Paul, but I can just never do it properly. So
nothing prepared in that area of Coke floats. I forgot
I missed that in the research. That's right.
All right, one other thing here, and you might have caught this one coming in as far as the man in the gray suit. It just one after the other. Who was the guy in the gray suit? Climbed up the ladder, and apparently the local authorities never asked to check his credentials. They figure, I mean, who's crazy enough to come up in a suit up a ladder in the midst of all of these things going on? We had who was it? Ron Johnson, and Ron kind of answered the question. Well, I don't know if he answered the question, but when Maria asked him,
the Secret Service did not even attend the 9 o'clock security meeting with local law enforcement. Law enforcement wasn't even on the same channel.
Senator, that was a 9 a.m. meeting on July 13th, the day of the shooting.
Now think about that, Mike. At 9 o'clock, they didn't even attend the meeting, the 9 o'clock meeting to say, all right, let's figure out who's going to do this, who's going to do that. And then we found out that they're not even on the same channel.
The Secret Service did not even attend the 9 o'clock security meeting with local law enforcement.
Crazy.
Law enforcement wasn't even on the same channel.
Senator, that was a 9 a.m. meeting on July 13th, the day of the shooting.
Correct. Weren't even there. Turned over some of the outer perimeter stuff to local law enforcement. They weren't even on the same security channel. So the sniper and SWAT teams weren't on the same channel as the patrol officers, and they weren't on the same channel as Secret Service. So they had to relay things.
After the shooter was taken down by Secret Service, the local law enforcement started taking pictures of the dead body, right? Can you tell us what happened then?
Correct. So that sniper team that was in the AGR building, they're the first ones that went up on the roof. They were the first to encounter the dead assassin at that point in time. Somebody told them to send the pictures they had taken to an ATF agent, which I think is very strange. We called up that ATF agent. That individual said that he was with ATF, and now he's gone dark. We've also reached out to the Secret Service agents in charge on the ground. All we're getting there is the runaround. So we are getting information from local law enforcement, and we appreciate that. But unfortunately, federal law enforcement agents, they're just saying, well, go through your congressional liaison. Again, that's going to be unacceptable. I wish I could rely and have faith in the FBI and the Secret Service to do a truthful accounting of this, but that's not been my experience with the Russian collusion hoax, and for years, dealing with federal law enforcement, we need completely separate and independent investigations, and it has to start now.
Are you questioning whether or not there was a second shooter? Is that what you're questioning? Or if the shooter had a different gun?
I saw an extremely convincing video online. I know it's all over the place. You know, there were 3 distinct shots early on, followed by another 5 in more staccato, more rapidly fired, and then the final one, which we believe took the shooter out. How do you explain that? I don't know. I'm not an expert. But the individual putting that video out says it clearly shows that there are at least 3 different weapons fired that day. Again, I don't know, but we can't trust the FBI and the Secret Service to do an honest and open and transparent investigation. That's just a very sad fact. So we've got to rely on other sources independent to really find out what the truth of the matter was on Saturday, July 13th.
I'm blown away by this because, number one, we're quite a few days since that happened, and we don't even know. There's some idea that there is I mean, in that it's a closed area. It's not that. Did the shooting come from the stands? Did it come from the water tower? Did it come from the roof? Was more than one sniper? Did the other snipers fire? You have any clarity at all on this?
No, not really. What I could tell you is from my experience, there are a lot of federal law enforcement on the scene. Anytime the president or the vice president comes into an area, Secret Service obviously is the first and most prominent detail that protects the president and vice president. But there are other federal law enforcement and local and state law enforcement on the scene. I have no idea why the ATF agent would have gone to the roof and asked local law enforcement to text him the photograph. That is highly unusual. If I were to speculate, I would think it would have been just for his personal benefit, not for ATF's benefit. That's not ATF's jurisdiction.
Yeah.
You know, ATF would have been in a supporting role if they were there in an official capacity. But why he had local law enforcement text that to him, I can't answer. And it's not, and sadly, it's not unheard of that local law enforcement is not on the same channel as federal law enforcement. This is a big complaint after 9/11, after the 9/11 Commission, about the interoperability between federal and state and local law enforcement to be able to coordinate and be able to talk when things happen like this. And it's sad to see that now, almost 23 years later, that issue has not been rectified.
It reminds us after Hurricane
Absolutely.
Camille that that was one of the big things. We had so much lack of communication that we couldn't just solve, basic problems because it was hard to communicate.
And Hurricane Katrina as well.
I really actually meant Katrina.
I figured you did. That's why.
All right, it's Monday in the cobwebs of trying to get everything in over the weekend.
There's been a lot going on in the last 8 days. That's for sure.
Absolutely crazy. So, I do want to get to the announcement from Joe Biden. Even a lot of questions there. It just seemed like he was leading to the point where he was going to fight for this. Some statements coming out of the White House, some statements coming from his team, some statements coming from, I think, 6 or 7 of the major states, certainly some of the swing states, and the chairman, the Democrat chairman, all getting behind him saying, let's go, Joe. And then within a matter of a few hours, that letter came out.
Right.
Your thoughts?
Well, to me, it's very disingenuous on the part of the Democrats. Think about this. I mean, every major Democratic elected official, from Benny Thompson to Kamala Harris to all up and down, have been telling us for years, not weeks, not months, for years, that Joe Biden is great. He's got vitality. He's out there. He's the man. And then all of a sudden we see the debate performance a few weeks ago. And then all of a sudden we see the news conferences he tries to put on. We see him for what he really is. And these men and women have been seeing him that way for the last 3.5 years he's been in office. If I were the American public, I'd be pissed off that they've been lying to us like this. And now they want to just throw him under the bus and say, oh, you know what, you guys in the Democratic Party, you Democratic voters have voted for him in the primaries. We understand that. But now we're going to just throw him away, and we're just going to pick. We, the corporate elites, are going to pick who our presidential candidate is. That is not the democratic process that we know in the United States of America. And again, if I were Democrats, I'd be very, very, very upset with the party leaders for doing this to them.
It is also interesting that there is the talk behind the scenes, Mike, of would it be better for her to assume the presidency now, let him go on and resign, let her sit in the Oval Office, in the chair, look presidential? Would that help her? And I think it would help her greatly to assume where people look at it and say, okay, she looks comfortable there. Maybe I'll switch. But his ego's to the point he can't do that. So, and also, as far as this morning, I haven't seen anything new. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Clintons are on her side. She's gotten a lot of other okays and endorsements, but not Barack Obama.
Not the Obamas. That's correct.
What's up with that? More with Mike Hurst coming up. Mike Hurst, former U.S. attorney and also current state GOP chair. Does this change? Well, it does change things, but she just got around $50 million from some of the excitement as far as campaign contributions. And also, we learned that she has made it official. She's filed with the FEC, and she now has the Biden-Harris campaign funds at her disposal, and that was a big deal.
Well, that's a huge deal. But what I can tell you about the $50 million they raised, I mean, that's typical anytime you have such a seismic change in a political campaign. I mean, I don't see $50 million as being that much, honestly, considering that you had a sitting president just announce he's not running for re-election, and his vice president is stepping up. $50 million is not that very much, Paul.
Well, as far as this primary, some type of a primary structure during the convention, what do you think is going to happen with that one? Because Manchin's talking about coming back in as a Democrat, which is farcical, I think. But there are other people out there. And on her vice presidential pick, looks like it's going to be the governor of Ohio, because she's going to play strategy, and they need Ohio. Got to shore it up. And the last I heard, Trump is leading. This sounds like the rapture. Trump is leading by 10 in Michigan.
Wow. Yeah, some of the names I've heard are the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, obviously Andy Beshear, and Kentucky, governor there. What strikes me, though, for the upcoming Democratic National Convention is, one, they kicked Robert Kennedy Jr. out of the Democratic Party, so he cannot be a threat to them, because he is a threat to them. I think they will try to coalesce. I think you will see the Obamas behind the scenes maneuvering to not have Harris. I know that's crazy to say, but the fact that Barack Obama did not endorse her, the antagonism between Michelle Obama and the Bidens. I mean, there's a lot of friction there, and I don't see them necessarily jumping on the bandwagon unless they have no other option. And when they have no other option, they will, avail themselves of this opportunity, because that's what they will see it as, and they will have to do that. But I think it's going to be mayhem in Chicago come August when the Democratic Party meets to nominate this presidential candidate.
How long do you think that animosity's been there? For a long time, or maybe just in the last year?
No, I think it has been there a long time. I think it's been there since Barack Obama first ran. And the Bidens challenged him, and I think it was there. According to reports, it was there throughout his entire presidency. And you definitely see it remains today with the absence of Michelle Obama throughout President Biden's re-election campaign this season. So how long that lasts, I do not know.
Some great sound bites with her, though.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay.
I did inhale.
Okay. What were you listening to when you was high?
I think it's just
Snoop Dogg and Tupac is what she said, by the way.
Yeah.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay.
I did inhale.
Okay. What were you listening to when you was high? What was on? What song was?
Tupac.
Okay.
Paul, there is so much material out there. She talks about in 2019, I think it was, she was interviewed by ABC, and she said, those who come across our border, those who are illegal aliens, she called them undocumented, but those who are illegal aliens, she said they should not be considered criminal in her mind.
Yep.
2018, she was on, I think it was on CNN, they were asking her about, if convicted terrorists and rapists should be allowed to vote in prison. She said, I think that's a conversation we should have. I mean, the amount of material that this woman, again, we should not be looking at personalities here. We should be looking at substance, looking at policy. And the policy that she's promoting, she had one job in this administration, one job, border czar. And how did that work out, Paul? Not too good. Because over the last 3.5 years, we've had 10 million illegal aliens stream across our unsecured border. And that was her one job.
Did she ever go to the border, though? I mean,
well, she claimed, that was another thing. She claimed to have went to the border. She said, we've gone to the border, and then, to his credit, Lester Holt on NBC confronted her, said, you have not been to the border. And she said, well, I haven't been to Europe either. Well, I don't understand your point.
I have that cut in here somewhere, and I can't even find it. I've got so many different cuts.
I mean, that's the crazy thing. She will continue to lie and lie and lie until someone confronts her, and then she doesn't understand what they're asking her about.
I posted something on X that basically she mirrors exactly what the ideology is of Biden. You just replace the dementia with a laugh,
right?
And you've got the same political ideology.
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. This whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
Okay. God. Sitting down, right now we need to be tough with leaders across the world.
Right. Right.
The ones that we can't talk to viscerally, we need to be tough.
Right.
The ones we can, we need to tell them, again, you pay your fair share. This ain't the vehicle to do it with.
And if you see these statements she's made in the past, what can be unburdened by what has been, the significance of time is that time is significant. I mean, it's words. It's word soup. We can't even digest what she's saying. And this is who the Democrats are putting up for their presidential candidate.
Mike, I don't think they have a choice. And again, when you talk about DEI, it is a big deal with them. I mean, this is who they are. They are not so much the outcome of what happens in your city, or what happens in your state, or what happens in your nation. It's all about feelings, and if they feel good about it, that's all. We said that for the longest time, and one of the things you have to put on the sheet of failures with Joe Biden, I've said this for a long time, not only the policies he's put forth, but the people he's put forth to execute those policies.
Right.
Mayorkas now has got a lot of answering to do for the Secret Service as well as the border.
Right. No, that's exactly right. It's putting personalities and people above policy. And, we're seeing the results of that. We're seeing the highest inflation that I've ever seen in my lifetime. We're seeing from the mid 80s until 2020, we had about 10 to 12 million illegal aliens in this country. And then over the last 3.5 years, we've eclipsed those numbers in just 3.5 years of this administration.
I wonder what this, speaking of posting, I said this yesterday, I wonder what this is going to do to the illegals and to that movement. Will they feel a little less sure? Because they've kind of grown accustomed to Biden. Biden is kind of the grandfather that's welcomed them in. And now, since he's not going to be there, are they a little more reticent about going over and filling out a form?
Well, I think they are absolutely paying attention. And we know this because when Biden was elected, that's when we had the unrelenting surge, the invasion, if you will, across our southern border. I think, Paul, over the next 6 months, if the people around the world who are trying to get into this country see that the Biden administration and now the Harris administration are not going to be reelected, I think you're going to see an unbelievable surge trying to get in under the window in the last 6 months of the Biden presidency. And that's going to stretch our men and women on the border who are working for Border Patrol very thin.
Here's the other part as far as Kamala is concerned. On the things where she's not laughing and she is at least unfortunately serious about it, you worry about those things too.
Back to the United States Congress, here's my point. If they fail to act as President of the United States, I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal.
That's a little scary.
That's frightening. And
if they got the House and the Senate and Kamala was in there, I think the Supreme Court's gone.
Yeah, that you may very well be correct. I mean, that's been the playbook the entire time of the Democrats since Trump's been, replaced the Supreme Court members, is to try to expand the court so they can put more Democratic members on the court. But going back to Kamala, the thing that, my background with law enforcement is the thing that concerns me with her is that she does not think that we solve the crime problem with more police officers. She doesn't believe that. I mean, she has specifically said that putting more police officers on the street does not make our neighborhoods and our communities safe, which is just nonsense, absolute nonsense. Yeah. I mean, I talked to many, many people in the city of Jackson and throughout the state when I was U.S. Attorney. They, Democrat or Republican, they wanted more police officers. You cannot tell me that more cops on the beat, more cops walking the streets does not make our community safe, because it does.
I think she is kind of a chameleon, too, to the point of whatever ways the winds are blowing, she goes sometimes.
Yeah.
There was a tremendously interesting give and take when she was in the debate as far as the Democrat primaries with Tulsi Gabbard, who is now, of course, left the Democrat Party. And if you haven't heard that audio, just to go back and revisit this, it is important to do so for everybody out there who's going to vote this election to want to know exactly a little bit about who this woman is that may be the next president of the United States of America, God forbid.
Yeah.
That audio, when we return. Right
yeah, she was a progressive prosecutor before we knew what those were.
That's it. And then the winds changed, and she did too. That one. President Biden's decision does not diminish potential legal jeopardy for Hunter Biden. One of the stories out there, this is from Catherine Herridge, and the family members of the California felony tax case. Page 1 part says indictment calls for Hunter Biden. Oh, page 1 on the indictment calls Hunter Biden a lobbyist. Page 3 and 4, she writes, as she looks at some of this material. Business deals with the Ukraine, Romania, China, and the communist country of China and some of the big companies there when his father was VP. So I guess the reason I read that was, does this mitigate at all the idea that he wants to hang on till the last minute to serve out his term so he can issue that pardon?
I think there's no doubt in my mind. I'll bet you a dollar to a donut that he pardons Hunter Biden before he exits. Whether Harris wins or loses, Biden is pardoning Hunter Biden. You heard it here first.
Yeah. How does that work if there are crimes not yet that he hasn't been charged with?
I don't think he can pardon him for any crimes he hasn't been charged with. I'm specifically talking about the gun charge that he was recently convicted of.
But that's the only one he's been convicted of.
That's the only one. That's the only one, and it's a federal crime. Yeah. He doesn't have any authority over the state or local crimes.
As far as the investigation and some of the business transactions, etc., he can't do anything with that.
Well, if it's federal, he could obviously try to tell his Department of Justice, which we've seen allegations of this administration doing that with this Department of Justice. Whether it's effective or not, who knows?
We were talking about that before we left the Tulsi Gabbard, and here is the give and take back, and Tulsi was tenacious. She did a great job.
She always is.
Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. That would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place. That impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
I want to go back to something. I said the Ohio governor. You were right. It was the Pennsylvania governor who was the Shapiro. I was thinking he was from Ohio. It's Pennsylvania, so you were right about that. Your thoughts on why she's changed like this, and does that really matter with most of her voting base anyway?
No, I don't think it does. I think you nailed it perfectly. She is a chameleon. She's going to change with whatever the times call for her. Whatever she needs to do to gain and retain power, she's going to do that. And we've seen that from those first few clips when she was dating Montel Williams until now, where she's about to presumably become the Democratic nominee for president. She will do whatever it takes to retain power.
As the put on your GOP chairman's hat now, and after the assassination, we talked to you about that one. Were there any other discrepancies since the last time you were on? You said this is crazy. To me, one of the nexuses that I think needs to be answered, and I don't believe in a lot of these conspiracy things. Sometimes you see flashes. Flashes could be a lot of different things. Sometimes it's kind of an enclosed area. I'm not sure what the echo was. All those things need to be verified one way or the other.
I agree.
But still, this guy bugs me. First of all, I don't know why they're still showing his picture when he was in the 9th grade or 10th grade. I don't understand. There's got to be some new pictures out there of the guy that are updated a little bit more. but that he was able to do all of this. And then there's this possibility with the encryption, and then Iran is sitting out there, and we found out that they want to assassinate the president. Are these things connected?
I don't know if they're connected, and I would agree with you. We need to be patient with the investigation. There was stuff going around X, or the old Twitter, saying that the woman sitting behind the president was the director of the FBI. That's debunked. Yeah. I mean, we have to be very careful with the stuff that's being put on social media and not fall prey to that. What I will tell you is, to your point, I'm exactly in the same boat in terms of being concerned about our real enemies, our foreign enemies, who see a 20-year-old deranged individual be able to go behind what should be the preeminent law enforcement agency in the world, the ones who we task with protecting our president and presidential candidates, being able to subvert them and get within 130 yards of a presidential candidate in an attempt to assassinate. That's what concerns me. They see what that a 20-year-old can do there, who is mentally deranged, and that's the fear I have. They take advantage of those holes.
One of the reasons we're concerned, Mike, is this, because if it was incompetence, we should be concerned, and we are, and everybody on both sides of the aisle should be concerned. If it was intended, we should be concerned. In this particular case, it's almost like it's intended with incompetence. A little of both. A
little of both is what I would say. I mean, you have the director of the Secret Service for months before this promoting DEI and diversity of the workforce. Paul, we do not want diversity in Secret Service. We want the best candidate, male or female, to do the job. And that doesn't mean we want a diverse group. It's the same with your doctor. If you have a brain surgeon, do you want the most diverse brain surgeon, or you want the best brain surgeon to do your operation? Same with air pilots. Same almost into any entity or any corporation. But for whatever reason, for the last few years, we've had these corporations go down this DEI route where they are promoting stuff that's not in the best interest of their corporations or their shareholders. And the only area that I can see where the American public does not allow for diversity, does not allow DEI, you don't see any talk of DEI, is what? In our sports. You will never hear DEI mentioned in our sports.
Can you imagine if we were competing in the Olympics with DEI? We might as well stay home.
Yeah.
This thing is like 3 or 4 pages. I want to read it so badly, but it would take up a whole segment. The guy's name is Matt Tardio, Tardio. He's a retired Green Beret, prior law enforcement officer. Type his name up somewhere. See if you can go to X and get this. It's about a 3-page thing. He's an explosive expert. He breaks down the significance, of the Donald Trump assassin transmitter found there. And he said, there is no way this is an inside job. So he goes and he talks about the difficulty of him as an explosive expert. You have to have blasting caps, what it takes to acquire the ingredients for blasting caps, what it takes to acquire the knowledge not to blow yourself up when you acquired the material, and the smell of that, all of the things that he says. You could not do this at home without his parents' knowledge. You could not do this without some help. But it's a very, very interesting read. Vivek said basically a little bit of what you just said there as far as the overall attack of how we now kind of change it a little bit in the middle of the screen.
I think the reality is we got to avoid making the mistake of thinking that we're up against a candidate here. We're not. We're up against a machine. And the more we see it that way, the more we understand what's actually going on. I actually just had a good conversation with President Trump. I think his head's in the right place. I think the right answer is it doesn't matter who they put up, right? We stand for our own vision of who we are and what we stand for, irrespective of the machine we're up against. To say that, now that it's not Biden, it's Kamala, it's a machine anyway. And regardless of the machine's activity, we have our own vision. And President Trump, and I think the convention overall, did an outstanding job of laying that out for the country. Complacency isn't an option. I did see a lot of people last week celebrating like this thing is over. In some ways, this thing hasn't even begun. She didn't even make it to the Iowa caucus of her own party's primary nomination process. So people don't inherently like her.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree totally with what Vivek is saying. I mean, you have George Soros, the Clintons, the Obamas, the George Clooney. You have this machine that is running the Democratic Party, and they will do and say anything to stay in power. And that is, compared to what we as Republicans, we're putting forward policy that puts America first. And, we didn't even talk about the speech that Donald Trump gave, the acceptance speech last Thursday, where he was calling on the country to unite and to unify. That was one of the best speeches I've ever heard him give. And in the first 30 minutes of that speech, everyone was on their feet, and you could hear a pin drop.
One of the worst things said since that speech, I want you to comment on in the final segment. I'm not even going to tell you what it is.
Thanks, Paul.
If you haven't heard it, I'll get it to you cold. And it is terrible. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn my ears off when I play it.
I think I may have covered my ears up when he said it.
Coming up.
Me, that's very severe, that comb over. That's a severe sucker. What's with that one? It looks okay from the other side. But that is very severe. I apologize. Man, I looked up there. I said, whoa, look at that. Wow, that's like a work of art. Only look at that one. Don't look. That one, look.
It's one of the things I like about the guy, because he's not a seasoned politician. And you go to a rally, you're going to get your money's worth.
Yeah. I think that's what the American people like about the guy as well.
Here's what the cut, though, that I was talking about since that speech in that rally. This is Joy Behar, and it's unbelievable.
I'm speaking to fellow Christians. I was raised Catholic. I'm a Christian girl. When something like this happens to you, like this assassination attempt, and you say something like God was watching me, that is a very unchristian thing to say, because it's very narcissistic. What about Corey? What's his name? Compratore, the fireman who also got killed.
I don't know. I think some Christians.
What about all those guys who got killed on Sandy Hook? All of those people. Yeah. It's like, oh, God was watching me and not watching them. There's something very disturbing.
God should have pulled the plug on that mic.
We'll be right back.
You needed one.
It's all yours.
Wow, I don't know how to respond to that, Paul.
Have you heard that before?
I heard parts of that. Yeah, say that God is not watching me, and to say that God is watching me is narcissistic. I mean, that's maybe I need to invite Joy to church. That's pretty sad. I
think one of the things that we've got to do, and we've got to do it in unison, and it's hard to do, because the only attention these people are getting is from idiots like me replaying this, but certainly on Fox News. They got a bigger audience on Fox News than they do on the whole network. And we constantly do this because they say the most outrageous things, and then you know that they're saying the most outrageous things to get more airplay.
Right. And I wonder if Joy is going to say the same about Biden, when Biden said, I'm not getting out of this race unless the Lord Almighty tells me to. Well, was there some divine intervention yesterday or over the weekend from the Lord Almighty to Joe? I don't know. I mean, maybe. I hope it was. But I hope there's some divine intervention coming in November.
She ought to give up that position to become a pastor, or if she's Catholic, if she still is, being a priest is out of the question, at least in some areas.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I would suggest her go into the ministry one way or the other if she has all the answers there. I remember once, many years ago, we had a tornado, and it took out a church. And just a block from the church, I don't think it was a block, was a saloon, and it was not hurt. And there were people who wanted to get into some Christian philosophy there. I said, don't touch it.
No, only God knows why those things happen.
Only God knows. Final thoughts, sir?
No, I mean, this is an historic time. I think that goes without saying, but I think you'll see over the next 3.5 months that the Republicans are not going to take Kamala Harris for granted. We're not taking her. We're going to take her seriously. I mean, this is going to, as we've talked about, revitalize the Democrats for a time. But I think, again, if we just compare the policies, if we just go back to the basics and compare what Republicans are for versus what Democrats are for, I think the American public will be better off, and we will be better off as a country if we vote Donald Trump back in the White House.
Also, have you looked at? I've got one here in the voluminous stack of stuff here. There are some states where Biden's name has to stay on.
No, I haven't dug into that yet.
And you'd have to write in Kamala's.
Wow.
I'm not sure if they can change that or not, but apparently it's part of their constitution. I had it in here somewhere, and it's a few states like that. Most states are. You can move it around. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens. And I guess the next thing is the vice president.
That's right.
Do we have anything scheduled as far as you know that Trump is coming to the great state of Mississippi?
Not that Trump is coming to. I'm hearing things, and I can report back to you. We have a number of rallies that some of our Republican county chairs are putting on throughout the state, Trump rallies specifically, and very similar to what Agricultural Commissioner Andy Gibson did a few weeks ago in support of Trump. And so I'll let your listeners know about that, and I think there's going to be a huge turnout come November.
I don't doubt. I think it's going. I think it's going to top 80, 81, 84, maybe 85 million, and it's going to be.
They keep saying he's a threat to democracy. Last week I took a bullet for democracy. What did I do against democracy? Crazy.
What did I do against democracy? I took a bullet for democracy. Donald Trump.
That's right.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate you coming.